Hey everybody, I hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and welcome back to the Storytime channel. Without wasting any more time, let's get into our petty revenge stories. Our first story of the day comes from Captain Hook. D-bag neighbor decides the proper place for his glass Starbucks bottle is in 1,000,000 shards in front of my driveway. I had some real D-bag neighbors renting the house next door a couple years ago whom I had to bang on their door in the early AM hours on 4 or 5 occasions to get them to turn off their music/bass that was rattling my windows and waking up my 9-month pregnant wife, who I'm pretty sure would have beaten the guy's head in if I let her go over there. The last time it happened was 3 AM the night we got back from the hospital with our 4-day-old daughter, and my sleep-deprived self had some choice words. They also had a Harley and a diesel F-250, I think, with like a 5-inch lift and loud butt engine and exhaust that the guy loved to rev up in the driveway and then just do laps around the neighborhood for an hour or so. Also knocked over my mailbox once and my other neighbor's mailbox twice, as well as putting a huge butt rut in the neighbor's yard when he drove into it after a storm. So when my fellow grudge-bearing neighbor and I saw this small ticked freak stick toss a glass Starbucks bottle out of his window one morning as he was pulling out of his driveway, and we saw it hit the street and shatter and him just drive away. Keep in mind my neighbor and I were about 10 feet in front of him, so he definitely saw us standing there talking and then yelling at him as he drove off. We went over there that night and took his overflowing trash can off the curb, pulled out all the trash bags, cut them open and filled his truck bed with all that garbage. He left one of the back windows cracked about 2 inches, so we shoved banana peels and coffee grounds and other trash through the window into the cab. I went back to the house and grabbed a couple cans of tuna and we smeared it into as many nooks and crannies as we could on his Harley and dumped the fish juice into his helmet, which he was kind enough to leave out. Cops were there the next morning and I got to start my day hearing this white trash a-hole screaming at the cops for 30 minutes. Then they got evicted about a month later. So to be completely honest, the neighbors sound terrible. I wouldn't want to live next to these people, but I think there was much more constructive ways of handling this than completely destroying property that they owned. Yes, they did a lot of noise complaint type stuff. Yes, they did litter and smash a glass bottle on the road. Does that mean you should go and trash his Harley and his F-250? I don't think that's justifiable at all. What do you guys think? Let me know. Our next post comes from restlessbitchface. I fed the witch dog treats. Buckle up, kiddos. This is a long and exciting ride. The year was 2006. I was a young, dumb girl that had gone and gotten myself married to someone completely wrong for me. He refused to work, and as a result of financial difficulties of us both being in school and only me working, we found us living with his mom. Let me tell you, that is every newlywed's dream. Over the course of us living with her, anytime I would buy myself a food treat, mother-in-law would eat it. Didn't matter what it was or where I hid it, she was a bloodhound for sniffing out things that I bought just for me. The final straw was one night we had gone out to dinner at the Cheesecake factory. I had taken my slice to go and put it in the fridge. I was gonna have it after work the next day. Next day at work is absolute shoot, and the only thing getting me through my shift is the slice of cheesecake I know is in my fridge. I go home and pop the lid off the container and it doesn't look right. There are mother-freaking fork marks all around the outside perimeter of my cheesecake. Why, she could just sneak some off all around and I wouldn't notice. I was pissed. I went and handed it to her and told her she may as well eat the rest of it. Fast forward a few days and I am at the pet store picking up some dog food. I'm standing in line waiting to check out and they have these little boxes of dog treats that look like the little red boxes of animal crackers you can buy for little kids. Now, it very clearly says on the front, circus animals for dogs. About this time, I've got the little devil sitting on my shoulder whispering in my ear, "Do it." And then the angel pops onto my other shoulder and screams, "Freaking do it!" So they magically end up with the stuff I am buying. I drive home and leave everything in a bag all together on the kitchen counter. Several hours later, she comes into our room and says, "I think there was something wrong with those animal crackers. They were the most awful ones I've ever eaten. I had to eat a whole thing of frosting with them just to finish them. All I said was, huh, and shrugged my shoulders. Listen, I would have tried the exact same thing if this mother-in-law was eating my food. If there's one thing I can always fall on, it's that I love eating, I love food. So if I was getting all these treats and every single time it was spoiled because this mother-in-law was eating them, I think you let her off easy with little animal crackers for dogs. And if she keeps doing it, you should graduate to full-on wet canned food or something. Call it some gourmet beef dish that you saved in some Tupperware. Our next story comes from Your Mom, 1977. Cheating ex, his side chick, and other shenanigans. I caught my BF of over a year with another woman, who was a friend of mine. I had introduced her to him, and I ended it but had to see both of them regularly since we all worked together. 3 months later, he quit out of the blue, no 2 weeks notice, nothing. Because he got another woman pregnant in another state and she was about to give birth. He had worked for the employer for 10 plus years. My ex-friend tried to come cry to me about how he had hurt her too. I guess she assumed that I wouldn't embarrass her in public? She was wrong. I chewed her butt out in front of everyone in the break room and told her she got what she deserved. Oh, and the guy? The kid wasn't his. He quit his cushy job for nothing and had left such a bad taste in the supervisor's mouth from the other a-hole things that he had done that when he tried to get his job back, the boss told him, "Don't call us, we'll call you." I didn't technically do shoot, but God, after roughly the 1 year of heck with him and the year of chaos afterwards, really slept a lot better at night. Unfortunately for OP, this situation had a number of red flags. Red flags not only just for OP, let me clarify. Usually, it's not a good idea to involve yourself with somebody that you work with, which all 3 of them work together, which that was a nightmare waiting to happen right there. Secondly, a cheater is most likely going to cheat again. So your ex-friend goes and sleeps with your boyfriend, and then she assumes he's going to be loyal? I feel like she should have been aware that it was a very real situation that could have happened. And, well, did. And our next story is written by leeleegopeepee. Kid on the school bus gets more than he bargained for when he steals my brother's snacks. This preteen imbecile, without asking, would snatch my brother's backpack from the seat behind us and root through it for food. He would then proceed to loudly complain to anyone listening if there was nothing edible or if he didn't like what he had stolen. We repeatedly told him to stop, but this continued to occur over a span of several months. So, as anyone would do in the situation, we decided to fill a bag of very enticing looking corn nuts with dog kibble and wasabi balls. For those of you who don't know, wasabi balls are the same size and weight of corn nuts and you can't taste the spice until they've been in your mouth for about 3 seconds. The kibble was also the same size/weight as the corn nuts. As per our previous observations, we learned that the kid would tear these bags open and pour about a quarter of the bag's contents into his mouth at once, so we planned accordingly. We made a small incision at the very bottom of the bag, took out about half of the corn nuts, and replaced them with the wasabi balls and kibble. We then used invisible tape over the incision to make sure the thief wouldn't suspect anything and shook the bag to mix the contents. In my opinion, it was great handiwork for 2 12-year-olds barely passing math. The next morning, we were more than ready to enact revenge. Our plan worked seamlessly. When the kid took the backpack and stole the bag of corn nuts, we discreetly watched from the other side of the seat. He didn't think to look around while tearing open his prize. As hypothesized, he poured about a quarter of the corn nuts into his mouth. He chewed for about 5 seconds before he spewed the kibble, wasabi ball, and corn nut mixture all over the floor of the bus. He didn't even look at us, which was probably a good thing, seeing as we were trying our hardest not to burst out laughing. Needless to say, he did not steal my brother's snacks after that incident, and he got in trouble for making a mess of the bus. I have many more stories about this dude throughout the rest of middle school and into high school, but this is by far my favorite. Man, oh man, I'm just thinking about all the fun concoctions you can come up with to fool this kid into eating it. Any suggestions? Kibble and wasabi balls though, that's a definite good combination. And the small incision at the bottom of the bag and careful packaging, I would say that definitely was pretty good handiwork for two 12-year-old kids. My condolences though to the other half of the corn nuts because you did have to sacrifice that bag still. And on to the next story by Seraphim676. The revenge that got me into Pokemon. I was sitting and chatting with my grandfather about my childhood today, and he told me about a simple story of petty comeuppance he got years ago. I was a young boy, perhaps 3 years old. At the time, my parents owned a 2-family house and were renting the upstairs apartment to another family who had a kid that was around my age, maybe a year older. As this was back in the mid-90s, the original Pokemon craze was in full swing. Yet somehow, the craze hadn't made its way to me yet. The boy upstairs had been collecting the trading cards and had decided to show off his collection to me. I don't remember what cards he had specifically, but for some reason I vaguely remember being shown an Arbok card. Immediately, I was intrigued. At some point, I must have mentioned the cards to my grandparents. My grandfather told me that he was out shopping with my grandmother one day and she pointed out the Pokemon cards to him while they were in the store, mentioning that those were the cards I was interested in. He decided to buy a couple of packs to bring a smile to my face. After I reveled in my new cards, I decided to go show them to the boy upstairs to show him what I got. As kids are wanting to do, he decided to brag to me that he has way more cards. My grandfather's first thought upon hearing that? We'll see about that. My grandparents were not rich people. My grandmother worked for most of her life, and my grandfather worked 2 jobs until the day he retired. He usually used the money from his main job to pay the bills, and the second job as expendable income. He decided from that point on that he was going to throw that second income at buying up Pokemon cards for me. He started slow at first, buying card packs at a time for a while, then eventually he started going all out. He would buy boxes filled with Pokemon cards. He befriended the hobby shop owners to figure out where to get the specific cards I was missing. He didn't just stop at full sets either. He made sure I had a full set in regular and holographic. If the card was printed in English and it had Pokemon on it, I had it. Later, my grandfather was over when the boy upstairs was down playing with me. He asked the boy if he had more cards than me now. The boy quietly had to admit that no, he did not. When the boy later left, my mother mentioned to me that it was not about who had more cards than whom. My grandfather quickly responded by saying, No, of course it's not about who has more cards. But if he's ever getting close to you, you let me know. What a champion grandfather right here. Just a hardworking dude that focused on nothing but making their grandchild happy, to make sure their grandchild had as great an experience as possible. Now that is a model grandfather right there. My only question is, can I go back in time and have him fuel my Yu-Gi-Oh addiction in the same vein? No? Okay. And our final story of the day is by CrewDog3950, Laundry Tossed on the Floor, Revenge Time. Back in the early 2000s, I lived in the military barracks. Just about everything is communal. After living there for about a year, I ran into an issue in doing my laundry. Every weekend I would do my laundry early on Saturday morning to get it taken care of and out of the way. One Saturday morning, I started my laundry and ran it through the wash. I had the timing down to know when it would be done washing and drying, so I went and changed over the laundry to the dryer. I started the dryer and went back to my room and set my timer so I would know when it's done. No biggie, right? Well, I go down when my timer goes off to get my laundry. To my surprise, it was on the floor in a pile and still wet. I was angry, but I picked up my laundry and put it into another dryer. I also left a note on the dryer that had my clothes in it, previously simply stating that it wasn't cool to take my clothes out of the dryer and throw them on the floor. I also notified the dorm manager and he said he will look into it. Later that week, there was a sign put up in the laundry room stating that if you mess with someone else's clothes, you will be reprimanded. Of course, this was a hollow threat and no one was ever found during the investigation. So fast forward a few weeks and this kept happening. I just happened to go back into the laundry to check on my stuff and there she was, taking my stuff out of the dryer and throwing it on the floor. I confronted her and she basically said that this was her dryer and I couldn't use it. I picked up my stuff and put it into another dryer and thought that now that I know who was doing it, that there could be some kind of action taken. I told the dorm manager I found out who it was and that he needed to do something about it. And he didn't. So I thought about a way I could get back at her. Now, I'm not exactly proud of my next action, but I was pissed off and tired of this happening. I went to a local hunting store and purchased a bottle of deer urine. I waited for my opportunity and struck. She had put her clothes in the dryer and I poured the entire bottle of the deer urine into the dryer, then turned it on for a full cycle of high heat. Needless to say, it made a horrible smell and her clothes were ruined. I didn't get into any trouble. She couldn't prove it was me. Now, before everyone starts bashing me, I could have handled this differently. I should have gone above the dorm manager's head to the first sergeant and let him deal with it. I was immature at the time and wanted to take action on my own. I think it's definitely a lot to go and buy a bunch of deer urine and basically ruin their clothes, but numerous times they went, pulled your clothes out, threw them on the ground, so uncaring, and said that I own this dryer, you can't use it. Nobody was wanting to help you out, there was no resolution, and this person was being a downright witch to you. So yeah, it was a lot, but I do think she probably had it coming. And in retrospect, I wouldn't feel too bad about it because they obviously didn't give a single care about your stuff. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So what I want to say is thank you so much for watching and listening to the Storytime channel today. If you enjoyed the video today, please consider giving it a like. And if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing and turning notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video from the Storytime channel. Every single like and subscription is an important piece of our amazing channel. So no matter what you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, or simply viewing the videos, thank you all so very much for supporting the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day.